So welcome back to our next episode on our KC Accountants Education Center, and we talked about the first introduction to advanced financial management, and I promised you that when I come back we are going to look at the examiner's remarks. I call them examiner's remarks because these are basically the things that you need to know. These are like the expectations. The examiner expects you to have this, but you find students have done this. So basically I'm going to flip it in a bit, in a sense that we start from the expectation, what the examiner expects you to do as far as advanced financial management is concerned, because that's basically what is going to help us improve, because we will be knowing what exactly we are going to do. So we are going to focus on the examiner's expectation, what the examiner expects the student to do. Of course, we look at, these are some of the things, if they are not achieved, then most of the times they lead to the performance not to be a little bit convincing as they expected. So let's first look at the things that we expect, or the examiner expects us to do. So you need one to be a little bit, you need to be able to compute and analyze results. This is very important. You don't just compute. You compute, then you analyze the results that you've gotten from your computations. So by computing and then analyzing, you end up trying to recommend some strategies. You can recommend strategies. Remember, I told you the question is basically going to be a little bit on a scenario basis. So you'll find yourself have to explain what the organization can be able to do to embark on the given aspect or the given scenarios that are within the given case that they have presented in the question. So they may give you a case, maybe they may give you a scenario, let's say, they may talk about maybe NSSF. They may not just necessarily call it NSSF, they may bring it in a sense of these schemes, retirement scheme. They give it a different name, but if you look at it, the examples they use in exams, they are supposed to be fictitious, because you are not supposed to present the actual companies, given the fact that you are going to be talking about some of the different aspects that may not be as good as the organization expects you to behave. So in exams, the scenario can be fictitious, but in actual sense you can actually relate to what the examiner is saying. If let's say they are saying KC retirement fund, of course you can relate it with the NSSF, National Social Security Fund. So that's basically how you will be able to analyze. Don't expect that you are going to have direct examples of the companies that you know, because that's not allowed. Because just imagine I'm talking about a company, let's say I'm talking about Stanbic, and I bring issues to do with money laundering, yet the companies themselves, they are not doing it. So they try to bring fictitious examples, but they are relatable to what is prevailing. So the case may be, maybe it may be about NSSF, And at the end of the day, they want you to recommend a strategy. What can they do to improve whichever scenario they have provided in the question? Or you analyze based on the performance and you say based on the results that you've got, you recommend ABCD based on the computations that you've done. So you don't simply compute and leave these aspects there. So you have to compute, analyze those results, and then be able to recommend strategies. So here computations, they don't just work. You have to defend your point. The only way you defend your computation is by analyzing. If it is all about ratios, put some comment to analyze what you have computed. Is the company doing well in terms of whatever you have been computing? So those are some of the things that you are going to look at. But most of the times, these questions, they will require you to prepare a report. Most of the, even if it is about ratios, they may tell you to prepare a report on the performance of the company. But they have given you, you are going to compute using ratios. Of course, you compute the ratios, but you state the format. The format is actually taking like 2 marks. It can take 2 depending on the marks that have been allocated there. So the format, but we've seen from our financial management, we know that a report can actually take the memo format as per the exam. But in reality, those 2 aspects are different. But we shall learn more how to prepare a report when you go to the advanced financial. It is more in the integration of knowledge. That's where most of the times you will be preparing reports and they will be in a given format. But here we can take a report as a memo format. So if they ask you to prepare a report and you present it in a memo format, it will be fine. As per the exam, they will mark you right. But it's always good to know those formats, and you'll be able to know what you're supposed to do. So, because most of the times they may ask you to prepare a report, but for you remember only the memo and you don't remember the format of the report. So instead of writing wrong things, you just go by writing the memo format. But when you're doing that integration of knowledge, that's when you'll be learning how to prepare those reports, proper reports. But it's always good to practice and you be able to work into exactly what they have asked. If it is a report, do as, especially when you are practicing. Because these numbers, as I said, it 80% quantitative, so you need to be doing the numbers. The examiner also expects you, the examiner expects you to evaluate investment decisions. Investment decisions that you can invest in. In other words, of course, this is the question that you can't run away from. Because here we look at most of the question 1 is on that investment decision, as it is on the level 2 financial management. So the things that we studied in financial management, they are actually applicable here, especially things to do with investment decision. They are really important. as part of the computations as we are going to be looking at them. So you can't avoid this number because it is within the question 1, and we said question 1 is compulsory, taking 50 marks. So for you to be able to do this number, you have to be knowing all the things that we looked at under the financial management, because the financing options that you are going to be having, you are going to have the money. This money is going to be scarce, so you need to make a decision as the finance manager or the CFO of the organization. You need to make a decision to see which investment opportunities or ideas are viable so that you can pick them and use the resources that are available to invest in those business ideas that are viable, that are going to add value to the wealth of the organization. So some of those good financing options, you may, for example, if you look at what happened to local construction companies, Oracle had, of course, we know it is a very powerful company, and it has been in that industry of construction for very many years. But we saw recently it was going through financial distress, and the government had to give them money. Of course, they were preferring shares, but you may look at these organizations, but they have investments that they want to make. And those investments, they need a lot of money, of which some of those amounts are not going to be available in the organization itself. So by default, when they look at the investment and they get the money from outside, you have to select which investment you are going to undertake so that you can be able to maximize the objectives or the wealth of the people, or to be able to pay off, if at all you've gotten a debt finance. So you saw what happened to local. They went through a financial distress, and actually they went to parliament, and the government gave them money. So the examiner may be looking at, if these guys have gotten the money, the question is, which investment activities are they going to be undertaking? Of course, by undertaking those investment ideas, you have to first evaluate them, and that's basically what the examiner expects us to be knowing, that by the time you go for a paper, you must be able to understand how I can evaluate an investment idea based on all the methods that we shall look at, plus the new methods that we shall be seeing, which we are not maybe on level 2. So the examiner will be looking at how you can be able to finance some of those investments, because you are not going to be having a lot of resources. The resources are going to be scarce. So we need to see how are you going to evaluate the investment ideas that you are going to invest in with the limited resources that we have at our disposal. So as a finance manager or as a finance analyst, you are going to be advising. One, you may be advising on things to do with financing options, because we, as I said, local went to parliament, but it had an option of going in for debt, like go and borrow loans instead of coming in for preferential shares. I also know that preferential shares are debt, but at least the other one, it depends on the circumstance that we are there. If you may find that maybe the company was maybe it had too much debt in its capital structure, so it couldn't be able to get any other funding from the debt component. And that's why they look at those different financing options, and it will be you, the finance analyst or the CFO, to advise on which approach to go with, so that you can be able to raise the finance that are going to help you undertake these investment ideas. So the aspect here is to advise whether you are going to be going in for debt or you are going to go in for equity. And also, you know that by the time you bring in the things to do with the financing, you have also to be careful on whether you are going to be paying dividends. Of course, interest is supposed to be paid. If it is not paid, then it's going to be accruing every period. So the other decision that you are going to be making as a finance manager is to look at, are you going to be able to pay dividend this year based on the different investments? Because you may be having an investment project of, let's say, 10 billion, but you have made profit after tax of, let's say, 5 billion. So the decision will be, the CFO will advise on whether they should pay, because if you are to pay the dividends, then it means you are going to distribute the 5 billion that you've made in profit after tax, and you have to go in for debt to borrow money to finance the investment ideas. So you have to be able to advise, if at all you can be able to come up and tell them that instead of giving these people paying dividends, maybe we just increase their shareholding, bonus shares or rights issue. There are so many ways that you can be able to increase the number of shares these people are holding, but they are also going to remain happy, and the organization is also going to have the money that you are going to use to invest in the different ideas. So this idea of dividends on level 2, it wasn't all that much as we are going to look at it under advanced financial management. It's a very short topic, just small computations. If I understand it, it's a number that you can score 100%, but it has some small computations as we shall look at. So paying dividend is not something that we looked at more in detail as far as level 2 financial management is concerned. But here we talk about dividends, and we go into more details of looking at the Mortgage and Mira and other aspects as we shall look at them. So what I want you to understand is the fact that you are going to, as a CFO, you are going to look at whether you are going to be paying dividends or you are not going to be paying dividends. So as a finance manager, that's a very key thing that you are supposed to look at. So sometimes here the examiner is going to be referring to you as a finance manager or CFO, or sometimes they call them head of finance, depending on the organization. Head of finance, director of finance. But the examiner most of the times can refer to you as a CFO or as a finance manager or a senior finance manager. So it depends on how the examiner, because on level 2, they call you finance managers. But here, you are supposed to be a senior finance manager or a CFO. So that's how we are going to be looking at that's how the examiner is going to be looking at you. And you have to make decisions on whether you are going to be paying dividends or you are not going to be paying dividends. So, but as I said, dividends is not a big issue here. It is just small. We just need to understand because the computations are very small and it is very easy to understand. And the approach I use to teach the dividend policy or the dividend topic, it is very easy for you to be able to understand. So just to know that that's a number that you can rely on if at all the examiner brings it, because it is very easy. Small computations. We shall be talking about things to do with Modigiran and Miller, the professor of economics. So we shall be focusing on what they published in 1958 and their argument. So their arguments for paying dividends or not paying dividends. Those are the ones that the examiner is going to be interested in. You look at those small computations on how dividends can be paid. Then we look at the arguments or the advantages of paying dividends and the disadvantages of not paying dividends. But as they were advanced by the Modigiran and Miller. So the other issue is on ethics and corporate governance, because this is where we are going to be talking about things to do with fraud, things to do with conflict of interest. We are going to be talking about money laundering and other company policies. So you have to note that the examiner expects a professional presentation. A professional presentation calls for very many things. If you are to present the information in a professional way, we expect to have maybe a proper handwriting, presentation, and others. And also, you're supposed to be attempting the required numbers. Like the questions that are required. They may tell you are supposed to do, in total, there are supposed to be 3 questions. But I said section A has 1 question, section B has 2 questions. You may find a student he doesn't understand maybe section A. You do all the 3 questions in section B. They will not mark them. They will just mark the 2. Because the more papers you mark, the more money you get. So you can't waste on doing numbers that are not required. In total, you will be doing, you will find yourself that you have done 3 numbers, but you are supposed to pick 2 in section B, then the other one is compulsory. So you do the required numbers. And maybe to add on my own thinking is you also present the working. Sometimes you may do the things in your head and you have to make sure that every working is part of how you're going to present your working. That is the presentation, professional presentation. So if they tell you prepare a report, they expect to first have a report first, then the computations, they come last. Sometimes they may not penalize you for starting with the computations, then you end with the report. But professionally, you're supposed to start with the report, then you bring the other computations or workings. on the second page. So that's basically some of the key things that you may look at under the presentation of your work. So, attempting the required questions, because when you attempt the required questions, then you are spreading the risk of failing. Because if you do very many numbers as they are required, if the other number you are not able to maximize the marks that are there, then you can be able to spread the risk by having very many numbers that were attempted as required. So that's one way of you easing your passing. You do the required numbers. Sometimes we look at question papers. Maybe part A, you know it very well, part B, you don't know, but you spend more time on part B where you have no idea or you are just writing wrong things. Just do part A, part B, leave a space, go to another number so that you can maximize time. By the time the other, because after all these numbers, you don't actually know them. By the time you are skipping a gap, you will come back maybe when you have done these other numbers for you to be able to manage time. 2, you need to start with the numbers that you are very sure that at least you can maximize. If I'm starting to attempt, we shall look at what are the things, but I gave you guidelines in our financial management paper on how you will be able to make sure that you balance your numbers very well. You start with what you know, and you are sure that at least I can get 15 or 20 or 25 before you look at other numbers. Now, the last part that I want to talk about as far as the examiner's expectations are concerned, you are also required to report on modern issues. Report on modern issues in financial management. And that's why you are seeing every time they keep on changing the syllabus, because they are bringing in new things. So the new things that we have, they are things to do with Islamic finance. Is something new. It has been here, but it is something new. Practicability in Uganda, something new. They have also introduced, as per the paper, they have also brought in these other things of international concern. So those are some of the things that are going to be of international concern. So most of the times these theoretical aspects, they bring things that you can relate to what is really happening in the space. So the numbers are not going to be straightforward. So if at all you don't, these are the things that the examiner expects you to, at least by the time you go to see the paper, you must have attained those. So by the time you don't find yourself, you can't be able to look at tackling new things that were introduced in financial management. You can't be able to do investment decision. You can't be able to advise on financing options, on paying dividends, and other aspects. You can't be able to compute and analyze the results. So those are some of the things. And even when you look at the examiner's remarks, those are some of the things that you are going to find. You may find that the examiner is talking about people not managing their time well, not presenting their work professionally. So I never wanted to go into the examiner's comments as per the different settings, but at least I'm giving you the expectations because they set these exams based on the expectations that they expect the students to. By the time they really say that we are going to see the paper, they must have attained this. So I don't want to make this video too long, so we are going to look at the relevances of this advanced financial management paper. How important is this advanced financial management paper to the whole CPA course? That will be able to give you a highlight on what are the things that we expect. So let's meet in the next video as we are talking about the relevances of this advanced financial management paper, the level 3 paper on CPA course. Thank you for watching. Endeavor to subscribe, share to your colleagues, and also make sure you turn on the notification bell icon so that you can be able to be notified whenever we upload new videos. Thank you.